I'm a victim of the muted mic once again, but welcome everybody back to the Prospero.Ai stock market live stream. Uh, I'll just be running through the topics before George joins us. We got the camera situation fixed. So if anybody was here watching on Monday and saw us struggle with the camera setup, it should be fixed today. So we'll be back in business early. But you know, as everybody's rolling in here, we have a lot of good topics we're going to cover today. So, like the video before we get started here. Good for the YouTube algorithm. If you're on Twitter, repost. But thanks for joining up. Let me see some comments. Who's in here today? Let's see who our viewers are. I see we have 9. Dude, it's going up quickly now. We have 13 viewers. Let's see if we got anybody regular in here. I'm thinking Joseph, Saul, who else? Wolf. He's been missing on a couple streams recently, but we always like to see who's in here. So comment if you're excited for today's stream right now. It's good to see the market kind of catching a bit of footing after, the little bit of cascading sell-off we were starting to see at the end of last week, going into Monday. Things are starting to kind of look a little on thin ice there for a bit, but the SPY and QQQ net option sentiment and Prospero got into the single digits, even touched zero, but we've seen them recover a bit off those lows. Not as high as they were previously, but I'll ask George about that. And it's good to see the recovery in those net option sentiment indicators in Prospero. We've had some earnings already reported this week, but we have a chock full week. We have Meta today, I think Google and Microsoft tomorrow. So a lot more to come. We covered Tesla and previewed their earnings on Monday, and it seems like we're on a good track of what actually happened because earnings came in very disappointing compared to how Tesla has been performing the past couple of years, but the stock still went up. So it seemed like that was priced in, and it wasn't as bad as could have possibly been feared. 22 people in here. Good to see you guys. Please like the video. Let's try to get to 20 likes today. We pushed for it on Monday, but we only got to 15. So let's do our here. I'm even gonna like it on the Prospero YouTube account. So I'll help you guys out. So I only need 19. There we go. I see 5 likes right now. Let's get that up. Let's get that number up. It's interesting, on the day of Meta earnings, there was big news. Hello, George.
Hello.
Just taking out the chat through our topics for today. It's interesting, on the day of Meta earnings, we get this huge TikTok ban or sell bill news, and we'll go into depth on that and what it means for Meta stock going forward. I saw a very interesting story about Warren Buffett and the total number of dividend payment he's going to be receiving from Bank of America this year, which is pushing $1 billion, which is pretty crazy. And I feel like in Prospero and in these live streams we cover growth in tech stocks and kind of getting value from those a lot. But we'll talk about dividends and maybe if investors should prioritize those or build them or look to build them over time. And we cover crypto a decent amount on the streams. George has a very strong opinion, but we're actually going to look at a company that's kind of leading in the crypto product development, I would say. So not crypto itself, but we'll look at Block and maybe if they're interesting. And they're led by Jack Dorsey, who's well known in the business and Silicon Valley world. So we'll get into all of that. If we have any sports fans in here like me, we got some big news in the sports world. Caitlin Clark signed with Nike after getting offers from many different shoe companies. We'll go into detail on that deal that she signed and if it means anything for Nike signing such a accomplished athlete in Caitlin Clark. And then lastly, before we turn it over to the model portfolio, we will cover 2 stocks. So you're going to have to stick around to find out which stocks these are. But they haven't really got their footing since the pandemic. They were kind of pandemic darlings. So we'll look at how those stocks are viewed in Prospero signals right now, and if either of them are interesting after they've had multi-year declines. Um, but George, I think we should start with the market outlook. I was talking to the chat before you were in here. I was kind of getting nervous the end of last week and Monday. It seemed like the declines were kind of cascading and kind of getting more aggressive, but seems like the market has caught some footing. Earnings seem to be decent so far. A lot of companies are going up after their report. So I saw net option sentiment for QQQ and SPY kind of rebounded from single digits and zero. So it could only go up really from there. But how are you feeling now on Wednesday in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that just now, and I was like, I figured I was about to do this update, and I'm thinking about putting on a bull filter again. I had the bear filter on, and it looked like it was in particular was the right move. Um, but yeah, I would say that um, it's still a tough time to read the market. I feel like you still kind of look at it day to day. I've been super busy today. I haven't actually gotten a chance to look at the market cap number, but we'll look at it live. Um, sorry, that like kind of cap value growth thing that we have, and like I would guess, yeah, large cap growth, the worst again today, after being the best again yesterday. So we just keep seeing that go back and forth, and that's the one thing that it's just like it's very like it's a legitimate challenge to invest in an environment where day to day, like Wall Street can't even decide what's good value. So it's definitely the time to be cautious without a doubt. Um, and we have to figure out um, exactly what's going on with the market. And until it can form some kind of pattern, it's very hard to do that. And we will continue to trade and invest. I would say actually our trading portfolio is still about like 1.25 to 1 long short. I mean short to long. Um, but lately we've been going pretty even for a while now, long and short, because there's been so much volatility, and that's always kind of a good strategy to pursue when there's a lot of volatility, because you can make sure that you know you're as long as you're picking winners and losers somewhat, like you'll do fine if the market's up or the market's down, if you've done a good enough job separating. So yeah, it's a very tough market to read. Um, but we're starting to, get our footing. We're up a little bit this week overall in both our investing and trading portfolio. So we're getting our footing a little bit again, but that footing involves us just trading very defensively and pretty neutrally, um, because it's kind of impossible to do better than that, I would say, in this market, because day to day things are up and down. So, buying, this is like a market that, even buying and holding uh, a portfolio of, straight longs is risky, especially when we saw like the large cap growth stocks take the huge hits that they did last Friday. Who knows if this is like just a bit of a recovery to that before they head down even further, or if that was just a quick correction that has rebounded quickly. Like it could really be either of those things, and it's very, it's one of those things that unless you have good data, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. So the contradicting data for large cap, maybe it'll come to an end, as this week and next week moves along and we get basically all of their earnings. We have Meta after the bell today, I believe Google and Microsoft coming up tomorrow. So those three are going to probably be huge in terms of how this week ends. Um, but we got some big news today about the TikTok ban or sell bill that we've covered before. But it finally actually got signed by Biden into law. So as of now, TikTok has 9 months to either sell to a U.S. company or to be banned. At the end of the 9 months, they can show progress that they're working on it, and they can get a 3 month extension. But they announced that they're going to be fighting this in court. So I don't know how the timeline is actually going to shake out. But It's kind of funny that it comes on the day of Meta earnings, and kind of maybe we could go through what it means for Meta that this whole story is seeming to come to fruition, where TikTok is probably not going to be allowed in the U.S. unless something happens going forward.
Well, I mean, they're trying to force a sale. So, like that's I think TikTok will probably fight it in court and then just like sell it to an American company. That's a much better like it would be kind of stupid not to if they said they're going to fight it in court, but it would be pretty stupid not to do that. Um because otherwise you just lose the market. You can either get paid or you lose the market. Now the interesting thing about it is that like and one of the very smart things that they perhaps forced is like I say for a while, like TikTok is so good because it uses government grade AI. The CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and ByteDance are basically, either the Chinese government is just like helping them, or they might just be like using the technology. Like it's very hard to know exactly how businesses work in China. But like one thing that's interesting is they could sell TikTok and then it could just like not work as well because they're not going to hand over the code for their institutional grade AI. Like they might just move in like there's different ways that companies do this, especially companies that like work with B2B. They could basically access recommendations through an API. Like there's definite ways that it can happen. But yeah, it is. It's definitely really interesting.
Now, I don't know off the top of my head the number, but I would imagine that TikTok is tens of billions, if not valued over 100 billion valuation in itself. So I don't know how many USA companies, are big enough to actually acquire it or even want to. Seems like, the list of, I would think it would have to be a tech company, multi-hundred billion dollar company. There's probably only a dozen or less companies that would fit that bill, and I don't think Facebook or Meta would be allowed to get it. So, do you have any kind of intuition on what company would be interested or allowed?
Like off the top of my head, I think Apple would be interested. I think Microsoft would be interested. Um, and then it's America. You can never underestimate just like some private equity company that's like just as like because what you have to remember is like not only are private equity companies super large, they also can like gather capital. Like if they're like if we have an inside track on the TikTok acquisition, they can gather a fund pretty quickly of like high net worth individuals. Like that's the kind of thing that like you could even get a lot of international money pretty easily. Everybody wants their finger in that pie, I imagine. But like that kind of gets at the question of like, what is TikTok or whatever without um without um uh the AI, right? Because it's just like, yeah, it's got some features, but are its features like really all that different than like what Instagram has or what any insert like? No, I don't think at the end of the day, like how they make the videos, and I even like do a lot of like I know we do the videos in CapCut, right? I don't know if TikTok owns that. But that's kind of out there, and you could make something in CapCut already and load it into Instagram. Like the value of TikTok is embedded in that recommendation engine. And if they're not selling the real recommendation engine, that would be an issue. Granted, and this is where it gets very, very interesting. It's like they could give some recommendation engine and it might not be the same one that like the home country ByteDance one gets. So there's a lot of interesting wrinkles to it. Um, but it's fascinating. I don't know if like it's kind of one of those stories. It's fascinating because like I can't remember the precedent of a company that like touches so many. Like obviously, if you're like talking about like some like special interest that like doesn't touch as many people. I feel like it's unprecedented. I mean, obviously, because the scale these apps get used at now, the number of customers that are going to be like potentially affected by this. But then there's also this other underlying story of like we continue to be pretty hostile to China at this point. I mean, you could argue, and we say, like, there's a pretty good argument that they continue to be hostile to us as well. But like, yeah, these things seem to be escalating, right? I think this is beyond some this is beyond some smaller like, oh, like you can't, we're gonna limit like the chips that you get or blah blah blah. Like this is just like a straight up attack at uh, a corporation in their country, and it's like one of those things where you have to see how they counter. But I would say overall, China kind of tends to counter in like more clandestine ways, and we're like much more blustery. So who knows? They might already be like, maybe one of our important systems is going to go down in the next few weeks. I mean, I shouldn't joke about that. Hopefully it doesn't. But yeah, I would say that that tends to be the difference between us and China.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see Meta after the bell, and if like anybody asks Mark Zuckerberg or anybody on the call about this, if they have a comment on it. Um, I want to spin to another stock that reported last night. Tesla, we covered them on Monday, and I think we had a pretty good foreshadowing of how the earnings would go for them. You could see the short that's on our YouTube right now. We posted it yesterday morning. Pretty accurately depicts. They had pretty disappointing earnings for Tesla standards, at least in terms of growth, EPS. I think their free cash flow was negative, but the stock still went up and went up quite a bit. They hinted at Tesla Optimus coming soon, um, a low cost EV. So, you know, seems like this is kind of was priced in all the bad earnings that came to fruition. The market was expecting it, wasn't surprised by any of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic thing, and this is pretty much exactly what we said. I mean, you teed me up nicely for it, but it was just like, yeah, Tesla gets beat up so much, and like, what I basically said is like, you never know how much of that is priced in. You never know what Wall Street was expecting, and like, I think clearly what happened was Wall Street was expecting the results to be this bad, but again, you could see Elon Musk kind of start to like, I mean, you could say wise up, but it's only in the sense of it's just like, it's complicated, like the idea of wising up, when wising up is just kind of like kissing up to Wall Street. And like him announcing that there was going to be like the new low cost model, which is just like, it's kind of funny because basically what you heard about it, I don't forget it's the model. I don't know their models that much. They were supposedly already making a low cost model, and then there were rumors of them scrapping it. And I guess it means they did because he's announcing a different, like, low cost model, it sounded like. That's like in development. Um, but basically, like, yeah, like that's what most of Wall Street reacted positively to, that there was going to be a new low cost model. Um, so yeah, I think that that's the big thing. Um, that they definitely need to um that they definitely needed to do something to kind of change the tide. And they did, and I think everyone had pretty much decided that it had gotten beat up enough already.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely satisfying to me, at least, and my contribution at Prospero when a story like that plays out. Exactly. I get a little bit of the George feeling where he says, I was right on this one.
Yeah, yeah, you
Going
did.
here.
You teed me up nicely on that one. But hey, maybe maybe it's not a little bit of the George. Maybe you're learning some stuff here too, Stephen.
True, the grasshopper.
Yeah.
um, So I wanted to cover the king of dividends today, Warren Buffett. I saw a stat that's crazy. So Berkshire Hathaway's second biggest holding, Bank of America, is their largest dividend payer. They're going to make or get almost $1 billion in total this year, which is about $2.7 million per day. And I feel like we cover, growth stocks, tech stocks a lot, and trying to, get value out of that. But I think we should highlight dividends here. Maybe you could give us an in-depth breakdown on your view on them, and if investors should build them over time, and if there's something that it should be a goal to where you could live off them one day, and how you think about all of those type of things with more value-based dividend investing.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have both a high income and and a very good record of picking like growth, tech, whatever stocks and timing the market well, a certain percentage of your portfolio, I would just like venture to say 30, 50% should be in dividend stocks. And that's actually like, if anybody has any time whatsoever, I actually really recommend that versus Vanguard Total Return. Like 50% of your portfolio in dividend stocks where you reinvest the dividends, and then the other 50% in the other 50% in various diversified stocks that balance out the risk well. And that's because Vanguard Total Return, that's a nice set it and forget it thing, or any substitute for that, an ETF that's kind of like a total market, or even like the SPY, the S&P 500. Like, I actually think dividends are better than that for the bulk of your portfolio, because the bottom line is Vanguard Total Return can have a bad year. Like, dividend stocks can have they're going to have less of a bad year in those times, because a lot of the times in economic difficulties, people want to buy them. So you do have that coverage. And so yeah, that's what I really like about those dividend stocks. Is that, good markets, bad markets, they're continuing to produce dollars at the base of your portfolio. So I think optimally, if you're trying to grow your wealth long term, you're looking at 50% of your portfolio in dividends and 50% in either active managed stocks, or maybe you do 30% in Vanguard Total Return on top of your dividend stocks. And then only the last 20% is in risk assets. A lot of that, like I'm saying, has to do with your income, your disposable income, and your hit rate over a long period of time. Don't be like, oh, I'm great at picking stocks, and your history of picking stocks is 6 months. Like, I think that if you have a longer term hit rate and a decent income stream, then yeah, it makes sense to be riskier. Otherwise, you really want to build that dividend thing, because it does grow. It grows and it grows and it grows to a point there where you see him, at the end of the day, he does, take some risks, but it doesn't really matter the risks he takes, because at the end of the day, he's got such a huge chunk of it coming back.
And we've talked before, or actually you have more talked before, about the difficulty of valuing, big banks unless you have an in-depth look and understand their assets. So, Bank of America being his second biggest holding, does that give them some kind of support, or you know, kind of a vote of confidence, that fact that he would hold that much of them?
I mean, we've talked about Buffett before, and I think this is funny because we haven't talked about it in a while. Like, I think what a lot of people don't know about Buffett is that he's not just good because he can pick companies. He's good because he's one of the best advisors to a company, and he's in close when he owns a company. You're in close contact as a large shareholder, any large shareholder. You're in close contact with the management team. But my guess is he likes Bank of America because they probably listen to his ideas, right? And he can feel like if he probably would like to own a lot of any bank that is open to him helping. That would be my guess. He probably feels a strong degree of confidence in not only management being solid and competent, but also that he can influence management with his wisdom and his connections and his ideas. Of course, some of that is even his reliability. That they're like, I'm sure part of it is like a handshake deal, which is like, hey, if I'm a large shareholder, you're going to give me this dividend payout, like year in, year out. And because he wants to hold. He doesn't want to have to pay like the capital gains taxes. Like he'd far prefer to hold, and he wants to be a long-term shareholder. So I'm sure he has a good relationship with those people.
And you say that, but then his biggest holding, which is 50% of the total portfolio, is Apple. One of the largest companies in the world. He can't have much say at what goes on at Apple, right?
I think he has say that like what goes on with any. I'm sure him and Tim Cook have a very close relationship. Now, like what percentage of like that's 50% of his portfolio, but like what percentage of that? I'm not even sure it's on the top 10 shareholders, but I'm googling that now. Okay, so it's Vanguard. Oh yeah, Berkshire Hathaway, third largest shareholder, almost 6%. After like, and by the way, if you ever look at this, anyone, Vanguard and BlackRock are almost always the two largest shareholders or anything. But Berkshire Hathaway is above State Street, Geode, FMR, Morgan Stanley, some pretty big ones. So yeah, like I think probably like, but if Vanguard owns you, if BlackRock owns you, like they probably don't, like they're the largest shareholder of anything. They probably don't influence you that much. Like it tends to be like if it's any active management, like I'm looking at like what is FMR? I'm not, I think they might be a hedge fund. Oh, is that Fidelity? Oh yeah, Fidelity Management and Research. Yeah, it's all these big things. I thought they said it familiar. Like anytime you have a hedge fund in your top 10 holders, like they're gonna want some back and forth. They're gonna want some contact. Like most of the time, like even when I worked for like a less than $1 billion hedge fund, the smallest, like the largest hedge fund I worked for was like only like 400, 500 million. Which at the time was larger. That's less money now. But like even then, we generally would not even think about owning a company unless we thought we had like a good path to management. And yeah, even me, I was just like, when I was like a junior analyst, I would be saying like, well, have you thought about this idea? Are you going to do that? I think this would help your margins. Like there's a lot more back and forth with these public companies in Wall Street than people think. And it's just like, and a lot of it, and like we talked about, it is about headline risk. Like the last thing Tim Cook wants is Warren Buffett to have to go to a newspaper after like Tim Cook didn't take his advice and was like, well, I warned Tim about this and he didn't. And Warren Buffett would have no hesitation to do that, especially after he sold his shares. So yeah, I mean, some of why I think Buffett has like the ear and the like is like pedigree respect, but like some of it is like fear. Like at this point, who Warren Buffett is, you you can't ignore his advice. Like, like you could maybe say, oh, it's not the time. We'd love to do that. That's a great idea, but we've got to pursue these other initiatives first. Like, you certainly can manage any shareholder, no matter how large. But as a public company CEO, you don't get very far ignoring any large shareholder. And that goes to extremes for Buffett.
So, spinning to our next topic, this is one that's very interesting to me because you've obviously had very strong opinions on crypto itself before, but this is a company that's kind of advancing products surrounding the crypto industry. So maybe there's some different thoughts on it. So Block announced that they're designing Bitcoin mining chips and Bitcoin mining rigs. They're led by Jack Dorsey, who was well known in the business world, Silicon Valley world, founder and CEO of Twitter in the beginning. I think he's one of the only people that I can think of that was CEO of two companies on the stock market at the same time. Um, and we've talked about, how important the leadership of a company is before. We've never really touched on Jack Dorsey much, so maybe we could cover him and what you think of him, and then Block. And if there's not a lot of companies. You have Coinbase, who's like a brokerage for crypto, but there's not a lot of companies making products surrounding the industry. So is that an interesting picks and shovels type of thing for them?
Well, I think first of all, like you really like serial entrepreneurship is kind of like a newer thing, you know? Like back in the day, like you almost made your mark, like the Jack Welch type. Like where it's like like, no matter how many ideas you have for GE, like you're doing them in GE, right? Like, and that was like a point of pride, right? I think now, like entrepreneurs have more power, like the funding environment is different. So I think you're pretty much talking about like three people when you talk about like entrepreneurs that are just like really amazing at starting companies, right? You're talking about Elon Musk, like who obviously has, you know, three big ones. Um then you're talking about like, and to be specific, we're talking about like PayPal, Tesla, and SpaceX, right? We're not giving him really credit for Quitter. That's kind of funny. How many, especially how many people they fired and them quitting on that name. Um, uh, that's a funny accident. Then you also have related to the PayPal mafia, Peter Thiel, right? Because he was not only PayPal, but he was a big part of Palantir, and then like a lot of other like smaller things that he just invested in, but like kind of Buffett style, really mentor. And then Dorsey. Those are like the main guys that like kind of are so prolific. They've done it on multiple ideas. And I definitely think what is interesting about all those guys and kind of when I singled them out is like they're like context switching, as they say in coding. Like, we talk about Musk a lot, and like that's actually, just to be positive, something that's really impressive about him. Like the story that I always love about him is like one of his friends asked him if he knew anything about building spaceships. And he was basically like, not really. Like he's like, not really. I just think I could execute on this. And that's the kind of like founder attitude that I really respect. Um, I'm not really going to talk about Teal and Palantir and stuff because I don't really like what Palantir does about like as a company, but I do respect it. Like, and I think as a business person, you have to be willing to say like, wow, I might not really appreciate that entity, but I do respect what it is, and especially that someone could be a big part in building multiple. But like, I think all that is all to say, it's just really impressive. Like the huge difference between like what Twitter was and what Square is. It's just like basically like pure where Musk is kind of like a technologist that creates opportunities with technology, right? I would say, Dorsey is much more of a reverse engineer of that stuff, where he sees opportunities and then makes the technology for the opportunity, right? Like he saw that there needed to be like a more brief social media platform because everything was way too verbose. And he saw that. And that's like an idea that is just like we see it now, like as being like, oh yeah, that's smart, but nobody else had that, right? It's not like Facebook where you're just like, okay, like other people were working on that. Zuckerberg might have literally stole that idea. Like, um, that's just like a really solid, non-complex idea that just comes from understanding the underserved or even sometimes unvoiced needs of a market. And I think Square is like that as well. In terms of just like, yeah, like that product caught on because like so many people had, digital payment problems, like people that didn't even know they had digital payment problems, like were solved by that. And I say all this because it's interesting. I started in a very roundabout way talking about how like these old school people just built their ideas into companies. And like, one of the things about serial entrepreneurship, and like I could say about my second company versus my first, is like I definitely have people around in my second company just like more broadly and set up in a way that's just like more comfortable for me and I like more. So like where I was like kind of knowing in my first company, like for a while I needed to get out. This one was more along the lines of like um I could just like keep creating things here, and I have started. Um, basically though, um, we like you see him going back to that old school, like, you know, Jack Welch, I'm gonna build everything inside this one company thing, right? Because like what he's doing in terms of the rigs is definitely like materially different enough from like Square's existing business that he could easily do the same thing he did with Square and just like start a new business. But probably the only reason he's not is he just like likes the setup there and he trusts his people and he sees no reason to do otherwise. So that kind of begs the question of like, does is this serial entrepreneurship thing like a function of the CEOs being flighty, or is it maybe a function of like the power venture capitalists have, where you fund a company, you get to the point where you don't really control it anymore and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna like, I have this new idea, I'm not gonna build this into Twitter, I'm just gonna go build it elsewhere. And I think, you know, you get your answer a little bit with how this played out, right? Because we know he's perfectly capable of just like starting a new idea elsewhere and, having two companies at once because we've seen him do it, right? It's clear that, using Occam's razor, the fact that he like didn't really like do this again, really kind of means that he probably does like the setup there.
That was an awesome breakdown of Jack Dorsey. That was really cool to hear. The only follow up I want to have on that is, what he is doing at Blocker Square in crypto. If we can continue to see crypto, take market share of the financial industry for the coming decades, is that a moat that they have now that makes them a very interesting investment?
Square, like, are you saying Square in crypto? Like
Yeah, like
building up his rig?
mhm. Being just the leader of the products innovation that surrounds the crypto industry as it grows.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of is that's beyond my hardware understanding, right? Because like part of it is like anyone can say they want to be a leader and start building hardware, but you know, AMD could roll out a rig that's just as good and cheaper, like because they have better like input sourcing relationships than Square does, and older and more scale, right? And that's the big thing with business, it's always scale, right? And like, unless he's going to start off like rolling off a huge number of these things along the assembly line, like it probably means he's not competing on scale. Um, so I think that's tough. I mean, yeah, obviously, if he gets momentum and he gets to a certain amount of scale, like scale is always a moat, right? I think we see that with Nvidia, like where it's just like, okay, like why do they maintain this market share even though like everybody's coming from them? It's because they have scale, they have the right supplier relationships, they're selling at prices that everybody wants, and the scale allows them to have like this like fund this massive effective R&D base, right? So like, yeah, if Square specializes to that part, sure. But it's the kind of thing that you always have to like putting on this like playing this out for a second, right? Let's say Square, let's say um Square does start to get some traction with these rigs. And Nvidia's just like, well, maybe we're going to build rigs now. Like, this looks like a nice little business that Square's making. Like, and that's just like classic large company stuff that you have to like, watch out for, you have to account for because you never know.
Yes. So we're getting deep into the stream. I know we want to do the model portfolio, so let's try to we'll try to cover this one quick. I try to sneak some sports topic. George knows onto the live stream. So Caitlin Clark signed an 8-year, $28 million deal with Nike. We actually covered Nike, I believe, last week and compared them to Lululemon, and I don't think they look that good. Could this change any of your outlook for them going forward?
Um, I mean, I think it's one of those things that it could be huge, right? I don't like, but I mean, that's a topic that I can't like women's shoes. It's something that I'm not going to say that I understand at all. I will say like if Caitlin Clark gets like women to buy like these like sneakers more, which is like it tends to be like I haven't met a lot of women that when they're talking about they want to buy shoes, they're talking about sneakers. But like I I think they said like Caitlin Clark jerseys are like what I think they beat like any other jersey or like I think some teams. I think there's some crazy stat about like how much they sold. Um, and like I'm just gonna venture a guess here. It's probably a lot more women buying those jerseys than men. And that's another thing. Like women don't traditionally like buy a lot of jerseys. Like I don't think I've seen very few like even at Giants games, the population of like men in jerseys versus women is just like not that. I'm not saying zero. Um, and also there's just a lot more men there. So like yes, you set that up well. Like if and I'm sure that's what Nike was looking at with the contract, like saying just like oh yeah, like she can actually create a new market of like women buying like Caitlin Clark sneakers. And I mean, I think that speaks to like people needing role models, right? I like, there's a movie about this, but like Jordan basically made like, created a huge demand for sneakers that has even continued into today. Like, men buy a lot of sneakers, but like I actually remember like getting a pair of like I think it was like I can't remember what was first, but it was like the Reebok pumps, and then there was like Jordans that I got. Um, but yeah, you can say that there hasn't really been like in the WNBA, there hasn't really been that just like huge star. And like I would say if like Caitlin Clark is definitely like someone that could. I mean, the buzz around her. I've like I've never seen more media around like the NCAA women's tournament than when she was in it. And like if that continues into the NBA, yeah, you could talk about like a game changing like product line and expansion because they're going to hammer the marketing if it starts to take on. They're like nobody does that better than Nike. Um, Although I don't really understand. Like I remember those big Nike like TV commercials. I don't even know if TV commercials work anymore. Um, but yeah, it could be very exciting. All right, I
You
think
know
we
what
got to
though?
transition now.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you on the other side. For the chat, the one thing I was going to say is like, with TV commercials, the one thing that it probably still does work for is live sports because that's one of the only things that people are still tuning in for live over every other thing because there's such an um, precedent to watch them live. If anybody was here in the beginning of the stream, comment now. I'm going to get into the two stocks that I said we would before when it started. Make some guesses. These are pandemic darlings that have never caught footing since then. So I'm about to cover both. So comment quickly if you're going to. Um, but without further ado, I was going to look at Roblox stock and Chewy, and today you're going to get me taking you through it on the Prospero app, not George. So Roblox, we see 54 upside, 33 downside, 69 growth, 72 net option sentiment, um, which is interesting because it is also upswinging on the time series graph. So I'd say that Roblox, although with 15 profitability, probably not a slam dunk, it looks decent, especially with the upside downside growth plus net option sentiment. I think you could do a lot worse than that. So Roblox, I would say, looks like one you should probably keep on your radar. And the other one was Chewy, which I use myself as someone with 3 dogs. Obviously, that Chewy comes probably every 2 weeks or whatever. So big user. That's why I was checking out the stock, and it's been worse than Roblox. Um, but let's look at it in Prospero. We see 46 upside, 43 growth, 36 downside, 40 profitability. Ooh, this is interesting. 84 dark pool for Chewy. It's probably a lot higher than you would really want to see for an investment because that's how you can see where the stock price is getting highly, I would get quote unquote manipulated, or it's not showing what probably is realistic because a lot of trading is happening in the dark pool. Also has 60 short pressure. So I would say Chewy looks probably a lot less interesting than Roblox in Prospero, at least. Yeah, the time series graph for the net option sentiment is downtrending. Highs of like 65 all the way down to 45 recently. So yeah, Chewy does not look as interesting as Roblox in Prospero. Um, for any other dog lovers, comment if you use Chewy to get your dog food. And in the chat, I'm not getting a lot of response from our viewership today, uh, but comment down below. I'm going to take you through the net option sentiment of the QQQ and the SPY. Also, let's see how the market's been doing since we started the live stream. The market opened higher today, probably the Tesla effect for the market open, and then sort of sold off, came back to even. It's up slightly. We're up 0.44% on the QQQ, 0.05% on the SPY. Let's look at the QQQ. The option sentiment is at 38
What about, did you
right
look
now.
at Roblox? I thought you were going to look at Roblox.
I did that already. We looked at Roblox and we looked at Chewy. Roblox looked halfway decent. I wouldn't say it's like a slam dunk investment, but it had some interesting things about it. Chewy did not look good. It had like 85 dark pool, like very low profitability. Did not look good. But yeah. But let me get the SPY net option sentiment as well. SPY is at 35. QQQ is at 38. So QQQ is now above the SPY. That's a bit different than past couple months prior to this little downturn. So maybe we'll see that continue going forward, and recovery in both of them.
All right, I've got to get this. I got to get all my stuff up and running here. I was actually I had like an oven inspection like in between that, and it was like so quick. I feel like, I mean, I don't want to break any laws, but I was waiting for like 2 weeks to cook on this, and they just like came in, they turned some knobs, and they're just like done. And I was just like, oh man, I could have been cooking on this thing. But I suppose they do the inspection. Like I could have been cooking on this, but I also could have been blowing up the apartment. So, all right, we got to do this real quick. Oh shit. I've been negligent today. I should really check this more. We are getting out of this like Spotify. Ugh, George. We might just let it even out though. Bad earnings today, I'm guessing. Yeah, Spotify's coming back. We got to see it tomorrow. Fang is looking okay. ODFL. We were making money on that, and it was. I guess it had bad earnings too. Oh God, 10%. Jesus, that is also.
We can't see your screen right now, George. I don't know if you wanted to share it or not.
Yeah, I did. We're looking at some. I've been too busy failings here, but yeah, I think we gotta. Eli Lilly is just getting crammed. Taiwan Semi. All right. At least the shorts are making up for it. I thought I got out of CB, but it looks like it's doing better. All right. So, wait. VRT was up huge today, I thought. No, calm down. All right. So, we're not going to do, we're in too big of a hurry. We're not going to post the sector stuff today because we want to get to new picks. Maybe we will. It's just so quick. We're just gonna post them. Since you do this every day now, Steven, we're just gonna.
I've been asking the chat questions all stream, but now they comment for George. We got Mario asking about what you think about Meta, and Shane asking, what's your favorite dividend ETF?
STHD is my favorite dividend ETF, and I think I'm gonna hold Meta through earnings. They've just been doing so well. I'd feel really stupid if I bailed on them when they've just been killing it, and they have this TikTok thing is I bet they get asked about the TikTok thing, and they'll play it coy, but it's good for them. We gotta. Anything else did we see? Spotify, we gotta keep our eye on. Amazon. I don't like that developer. All right. Now let's take a look at the shorts. I know we were doing bad on some of these, but we're back doing well again. PTCT, that's spiking. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, PTCT. What's going on with RCM? Hour, yeah, we'll get rid of RCM. Those are biotech stocks. I wonder what's going on there. Let's take a look at TEL. One of our new short favorites. Oh yeah. I should have never dropped this from the model portfolio. That looks great. We're holding on to both those TELs. Pam. Boy, we were right on these energy ones. I'm sticking with Pam. There's a lot of these elevated net option sentiment stocks. I wonder if that's because large cap. That's going on. Can you tell me what's going on with MNRO net option sentiment trends?
MNRO is at 55. It's at the high of the trend. It's going up and down, back and forth between 15 and 50 and 60 throughout the trend.
Okay, so we got some volatility there. We're not quite ready to bail. How about JWN?
JWN is at 41. It's slightly uptrending, way less volatile. It goes between like 35 and 50.
All right, we got to start. All right, we're getting at a CCOI. All right, what are we doing here? Ooh, BXMT was. Are these refreshing, right? These don't look right. What about IRBT?
RBT is at 53. It's in a pretty nice uptrend on the net option sentiment right now. Currently at the highs of the trend.
No takeaways. All right, now we just need this. Okay. God, I need to delete WinZip. Leave me alone. You're making this take longer. My precious time. It's like a precious 5 seconds. Lost. All right. All right, 3 minutes. How often why do we always do this to ourselves, Steven?
I was too interested by your thoughts on Jack Dorsey. That talk went on. I should have tried to cut us off.
No, that was a good set. I like that. I had fun. Actually, no regrets.
Yeah.
Oh, should we get a third GE? Would be interesting. I think we are ready to get a little more bullish. I can't see this. Why did I do this? Oh, that's convenient. I think I do want to add SMCI. And I think I am going to add a third GE. I've been very impressed. How many AVGOs do we have open? Do I dare get a coin again? No, not that.
Just one AVGO.
How many Chipotles? Maybe we'll get back into Melly. That's recovered a little bit. Great. Yeah, we definitely want to add some positions. Oh, we forgot.
Chipotle 2.
Oops. Well, too late for that. God. How about NVRO? I know we closed one out.
1.
LYB is an interesting one. Except it's going up. Is it time to get back into SBGI? We've taken it for numerous rides. No, none of this. No, nothing interesting on the short side. EVRG, what's that? Utilities. I kind of like what's going on in EVRG's like trending.
Big spike down to 12 net option sentiment from 60s prior.
Oh, I like that. Oh yeah, that's looking good. I might even take that in my other portfolio. All right, I think that's all the work we need to do. It's so sunny in here. I can't. I'm straining. All right. Oh, we don't have any of this, do we? All right, that is all. Do we have any more questions?
No more questions. So we'll end the stream, but all eyes go to Meta, Google, and Microsoft for the rest of the week, I guess.
Yeah, Meta is Meta reporting like right now?
Yeah, today. I don't know. Do they use 4:05? Could be like right now, but soon. So
Okay. All right. Thanks,
keep an
everyone.
eye on that. See everybody back normal time Monday, 11 a.m.
All right. Bye.
Bye.